Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of our Marvel Crisis Protocol roster building series. In this week's roster building, we're going to go ahead and try and build the tallest possible list. Now, we're going to be taking that term very, very literally, but traditionally, a tall list just means you're running as few models as you can, or fewer than the average at the very least. And in this case, we're going to be pushing that to the extreme, running no more than 3 models at any threat level. And yeah, we're gonna see what we can do with that. But to take that up one extra little step, unless a model is kind of necessary for that tallest possible list, for this example, we're going to be using Thanos, where Thanos is an 8 threat model, but he's not actually that big of a model. That's probably going to be the only exception to this rule. Every other model in this list, we're going to be choosing the largest possible model in each kind of threat class to be able to build as big of a list as possible with just these huge models. So to start things out here, we're actually going to be using a filter we haven't actually used before, or rather a sort we haven't used before, and that is sorting by threat level and going from top down, where we're going to see immediately who one of our leaders is going to be, and this is going to help a lot because obviously running 2 models and 3 models sometimes is going to be hard to be affiliated. So we're going to be starting things out with Dormammu as our first leader here. In addition to Dormammu, we're also going to be running Thanos. As I mentioned, he's kind of breaking the rule a little bit. He's actually going to be the only model in this entire list that's not on a large base. But if we give him 2 stones, he becomes an 8 threat, meaning at 16 threat, we can run only 2 models, that being Dormammu and Thanos. And I mean, who wouldn't want to do that, right? That sounds like a great game plan. So that's what we're going to be doing. That's just going to be the start here. And we already see we have 2 leadership options here, and we're going to have a surprising amount of leaderships by the end of this. But before we get into that, we are going to move into our 7 threat slots here, and we're going to be taking both Malekith and Immortal Hulk. This is partially just for variety. They're both large lads. They're both going to be stomping around doing their thing. Very, very scary, and we can pair either of them with Dormammu for an affiliated 15 threat. So, I mean, yeah, but there's 2 wide at 15 and 16. Unfortunately, as soon as we hit the 17 threat point, we do have to pivot away from 2 wide, and we have to start looking at 3 wide, but it is what it is. Next, we're going to take a look at the 6 threat slot, and we're going to include 3 6 threats, largely for that ability to play 18 threat with just 3 6 threats on the board, because, yeah, that sounds like a good time. So we're going to be including Hulkbuster, who notably is a leader for Avengers, and we're going to be including Hulk. So this list we just described of 3 6 threats is going to be Avengers affiliated. The last one we're going to include is going to be Apocalypse. Magneto, Thor, and She-Hulk are all not quite big enough to make the cut. There's an argument for Cosmic Ghost Rider, but I think Apocalypse kind of fits that large lad vibe a little bit more than CGR does. So Apocalypse is going to take that 3rd 6th threat slot for us here. Next, we're going to move into 5 threats, and that's going to open up a really interesting one here, and probably the biggest or second biggest model in the entire game in Sentinel Prime Mark IV, giving us yet another leadership here that we will be taking advantage of. So that is going to be giving us a lot of options here, but we do need to start spreading out the threat values a little bit more. So we're going to take a couple of 4 threats as well, notably 4 threats that are just as big, if not bigger, than everything else in 5 threat anyways. And the 2 4 threats in question here, if I can just find them real quick, are going to be a Sentinel Mark IV. Now, we could take both, would be funny, but the odds we're actually going to want to run Prime and 2 Mark IVs, because that's not even a full list of any of the threat values, and we're really trying to never hit 4 models, so it's just not going to come up. My original version of this list did have both Mark IVs, and that's just kind of unnecessary because we're never actually going to put that on the table. So we're not doing that. Instead, our other 4 threat is going to be what I believe is the largest 4 threat model. And it's not MODOK, it's not Rhino, despite them both being on large bases. But it's actually going to be, oh my god, I gotta scroll way further than I thought for him here. Black Dwarf, here he is. He is just such a large lad, and he doesn't see much play, so I'm happy to include him here. And very, very importantly, he is a Black Order affiliated model, meaning that Black Order is now a viable affiliation for this, meaning this is a quadruple affiliated roster, just kind of how it worked out, which is kind of amazing. I'm super down for that. But that is our 10 model slots filled just like that. It took no time at all and a accumulated threat of 61, which is kind of insane. I'm pretty curious to check actually what my other rosters would be for that. Yeah, so I actually just went and checked my just regular Avengers roster, and its accumulated threat is only 37. So pretty significant upgrade from that here to that 61 threat list. So kind of insane. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and move into tactics cards next. And the first thing we're going to do is, well, I mean, we're going to make sure that we're only looking at cards that we can actually use here, but we're going to pick our two restricteds. And I think when you're running this many large bodies, the most valuable restricteds are going to be Indomitable and Brace, in my opinion. There's definitely a strong argument for Patch Up or Sacrifice in here, but personally, when I'm running large models, I really, really like to have Brace and Indomitable because one of the worst things my opponent can do to me is throw my large lads at each other. We really, really don't want that, so we're going to be preventing that twice. And of course, Indomitable is also just good for preventing control from hitting us, so we definitely want that as well. Next, we're going to move into affiliated cards, and normally for Dark Dimension, the first card you look at is Dark Restoration, but what's a 3 threat? Never heard of them. We're going to actually include Dark Empowerment as our Dark Dimension card of choice here, just because I think this could actually be really interesting here. I mean, all of these models are hitting like a truck, so it's going to be really good for powering up each other. Yeah, just a solid choice in my opinion for this type of roster. Going into other affiliated cards, why isn't Avengers Assemble showing up here? Alrighty, I found it. There's Avengers Assemble, and yeah, if we're gonna have Avengers as a viable affiliation for this, we definitely want to be running Avengers Assemble. Another affiliation we have access to is, of course, Sentinels, as we realized, and I think Online and Operational is probably worth including here, especially with its recent buff. It's a pretty solid card, and if we're going to be running 3 wide with them anyways, we might as well be running Under Your Skin for our other non-Sentinel model there as well. So we'll be including that as well. With Black Order being our other affiliation that we have access to, I think it's worth including Mothership here. I don't know about including either of the other two cards. There's a strong argument for Blood Despair, but as you can see, we're getting kind of tight on card slots, and we do need to have at least 1 or 2 generic cards in here as well. So we're going to hold off on including that for the moment and just take Mothership because Mothership is insanely good. Going into generics, we want to make sure we include at least 2 generic cards that can be brought anywhere. That way, in one of the affiliations where we only have one of their cards, basically any of the ones that aren't Sentinels, we can just bring our one card. In this case, we'll use Avengers Assemble as our example here. Brace for Impact, Indomitable, and then 2 generics. So for our generics, I think the 2 that I want to go with, first of all, is going to be Recalibration Matrix, because I mean that's just really good with large dice pools. It's going to help that kind of spike percent really help that out a lot. Whether you're trying to fish for a spike yourself or just kind of prevent one from happening against you or something like that. So I think that one's going to be really valuable here. The next one that I want to include, I mean, there's a lot of good options here. Fallback is a great card. Survival could be really strong. I even tossed around the idea of Venomized. I think there's a lot of really good options, but I think the one I'm going to go with is actually Survival. And I just think this is going to be really valuable for kind of saying, hey, last round you teed up, Hulk to die. I want to give him one more turn. So playing this card could be really nice. Now, of course, a lot of the time you're going to end up having priority anyways. So you're probably not gonna run into that too often, but the idea of this list is all of these models are kind of hitting like absolute trucks, so you're probably gonna be trying to steal priority from, or your opponent's gonna have a chance to steal priority from you rather fairly often if you're doing well. And a lot of the times lists like these can go from doing really well to really poorly very quickly, as simply as like, hey, Hulk was on 2 health at the end of this round. Now he's off the board and I'm playing 6 threat down this game. So being able to kind of be like, no, he's actually going to stay on the board and he's going to get to have another good turn. It can be a huge difference for games like this. So survival is going to be really important there. Our last card slot, we could pick a character or affiliation card, or we could do another generic. And at this point, I think if you're doing your own version of this list, there's a lot of different options that would be really effective here. Anything from Malekith's card here, You could do something like one of Immortal Hulk's cards. I think One Below All is particularly compelling. Just a really solid card. Stark Armory could be really, really interesting here. Just adding dice to all of those large lads is really, really nice. I would stay away from something like Helios. You don't have that many models to pay power into it, so probably not that great as far as attack cards could go in this case, but I think there's a lot of valuable options here. Personally, I think I'm going to lean slightly towards One Below All. I think it's going to make a really devastating 15 threat, and I mean, at 20, technically, too, you can just kind of be like, okay, let's do Dormammu, Immortal Hulk, and then our 5 threat Sentinel Prime. So again, there's a couple places where you might get that chance to play Immortal Hulk, and I think in those places it's going to be really, really valuable to have access to that card. Probably means Immortal Hulk is going to edge out Malekith in a lot of cases. Of course, if you brought Malekith's card, that goes the other way. But yeah, I just think that's a really valuable option to have for him there. So we're gonna choose that one, and we're gonna go from there. So that is our tactics card selected. Last thing, we are going to be on to crises. Now here we want to kind of decide what our favorite threat levels are. We definitely want lower scoring objectives because we need to be able to just kind of murder our opponent's team. We don't have the models to spread out and play something like Senators. That's just not going to happen for us. So we want to be able to take advantage of those lower threat, those more central ones that aren't going to be able to, our opponent's not going to be able to spread out too much on them. So of course the first one we're going to be wanting to include here is Researcher. That's just right up the alley for these types of lists. The next one is probably Montesi formula. We've already established we have a really neat 16. Don't know necessarily how good it is running the Hulkbuster leadership, but there are also a couple other options I think we could do for the 16 threat. So we're going to go with Montesi here, and I think that could be at least interesting, whether or not it's good. But yeah, we're gonna include that one, and then another one. We just want something again relatively low scoring. I think it's between Deadly Legacy Virus or Alien Ship for me, and I'm gonna lean towards Alien Ship because I think the 1 or 2 damage per model playing the objective on our opponent's team is probably going to be more valuable to us than the 1 or 2 damage on us for them, if that makes any sense. So I think that's probably the pick here, although I could see an argument for Deadly Legacy Virus because it is relatively, I don't want to say easy, but easier to kind of have someone like a Hulk be able to hold on to all 3 until the end of the game sort of thing, or until, they get to pop with them. So strong argument for Legacy Virus, but personally I'm going to lean slightly towards Alien Ship here. Then we're going to go into the 15 threat here, and here I think it's kind of the same deal. We want those closer scenarios. We're going to be hesitant with something like Demons because being lit on fire is kind of bad, but we definitely like Gamma. That's going to be one that's right up our alley there. We're also probably very happy with something like Intrusions, and then my last pick for this one is just going to be Deadly Meteors for that eye shape that's basically an E shape, just tilted a little bit. Really, really a big fan of this one. 4 more tall fighty lists. So yeah, I think we're going to be including that one here as well. And again, just plinking that extra little bit of damage on our opponent. That's more valuable to us than it is to them. So yeah, I think we're gonna go with that one. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with the scenario list. Not a huge amount of threat variety, but that's kind of okay for us because we have certain threats we're gonna like playing at more than others. Although I am curious to see how our 17 is shaken out with this one, so we're gonna take a look at that in a moment. Alrighty, so reviewing the roster here, we have our 10 characters selected. We have Dormammu, Thanos with both gems equipped, Malekith and Immortal Hulk as our 7 threats. We got 3 6 threats in Hulkbuster, Hulk, and Apocalypse. We've got a single 5 threat in Sentinel Prime Mark IV, and then we also have 2 4 threats, Sentinel Mark IV and Black Dwarf. So really, really tall list here. Everyone is on a large base except for Thanos. Everyone is a physically large and imposing model. I think the smallest models in this list are probably Thanos and Apocalypse measures up to pretty close to the same height as Hulk, so they're really not that far off. But then I think Hulk is the next smallest in this list, which is kind of wild when you think about it, because obviously he is a relatively large lad himself. So yeah, all the big guys here. And then we go ahead and we move on to, I mean, Horsemen, we don't actually care about that because even though technically it's the leadership we have, we weren't able to put any of the Horsemen into this list, so it's not going to happen. We're going to move on to team tactics cards here, where for restricteds we have Indomitable and Brace. Again, those are just my preference when running the large lads. We've got a few affiliation cards. We have Dark Empowerment for Dark Dimension, Avengers Assemble for Avengers, Online and Operational, as well as Under Your Skin for Sentinels, Mothership for Black Order, and then we've got a couple generics here, Recalibration Matrix and Survival, and our only character card here is One Below All. So again, tons of options here at every threat level. We have at least one, or rather, at every affiliation, we have at least one set of cards that is legal, and that's going to always be, you know, for most affiliations, that's Indom, Brace, Recal, Survival, and then the affiliation card. If it's Sentinels, we just have to cut one of those other ones, and if we're running Immortal Hulk, then we can run that instead of one of those other ones as well. So we got a couple options there, but you know, it's going to be relatively rigid at certain points. But that's kind of what you expect with a list like this. It's kind of got its preset things that it has to play, so we're going to roll with that. Going into objectives here, we have our crises. We've got 3 extracts here: Research Station, Montesi, Formula, and Alien Ship. Over on the secure side, we have Gamma Wave, Intrusions, and Deadly Meteors. So again, just keeping everything tight, keeping everything to the middle. We want to fight it out. That's what our list is going to be best at. So yeah, we're going to try and take advantage of that as much as possible with this list. Taking a look at the breakdowns here, we're going to make sure that we've got a viable list at every threat level here. So at 15 threat, we have 2 lists that are 2 models wide, and that is just going to be Dormammu plus I-Hulk or Dormammu plus Malekith. Makes sense. If we wanted to play 3 wide, we do have a few options with Sentinels as well, including Prime and a regular Mark IV, plus any of our 6 threat selections here. So always great to see we have a little bit of variety and options there if we need them. So definitely happy to have that included. For other threats, we have 16 threat here, where we do have a 2 wide option in Dormammu and Thanos. We also have a few options for some other things. We have another Dark Dimension option here with a couple of the 4 threats, same with Black Order and a couple of the 4 threats. We can run Sentinels if we want to run Malekith or I-Hulk here. And of course we can run Avengers as well, where we are running both of our 6 threat Avengers here, as well as either a Sentinel Mark IV or Black Dwarf. Going into the 17 threat option, here is where we are forced into 3 wide. I know it's a tragedy, but we are including Sentinel Mark V, or Sentinel Prime Mark IV rather, for most of these options here. So Dark Dimension or Thanos led will be including that 5 threat slot, and then either of our 4 threats. In the case of, you know, if we're running Black Order, then we use Black Dwarf. If we're running Sentinels, then we use just the regular Sentinel. But I think Prime is a really worthy kind of inclusion, even outside of the Sentinels affiliation. So I think most of the time we're going with Black Dwarf in that case, unless we're choosing the Sentinels affiliation here. Then we also have Avengers, where we have Hulk and Hulkbuster teamed up with Sentinel Prime, which I actually think is potentially a really, really scaring list, and I'm tempted to try that out myself at some point, just as like a locals thing, just specifically those 3, and see how it interacts, because I think that could actually be really, really interesting. Over at 18, we actually have tons of options, just a lot of them, but the main one that we kind of specifically built for here is this Avengers one, but we can do almost all of our affiliations here. The only one we can't do is Sentinels. So just how it worked out, I guess, Sentinels don't work for this one. But yeah, they're all 3 wide, so there's nothing we could do wider even if we wanted to. Going into 19, here we have a handful of Dark Dimension options, actually a lot of Dark Dimension options, which kind of makes sense because we're really opening up the threat here. And then we've got a couple Black Order choices and an Avengers choice as well. And once again, I'm actually happy with pretty much all of these. I think they're all really, really interesting options. And then at 20, we go back to a few less options here, but still really, really nice ones. I mean, we've got the Dark Dimension double 8 threat again, plus a 4 if we want it. We've got tons of choices here. We can do Avengers. Is it just Dark Dimension and Avengers? It is. At 20, we can only do Dark Dimension or Avengers, so sure. I actually really like the look of this one myself, especially because of the card we included, Dormammu, I-Hulk, and Sentinel Prime. Although I also think the Avengers plus Dormammu or the Avengers plus Thanos could be really, really interesting as well. So lots of really interesting options at a lot of different threat levels, which is nice to see. I mean, going this tall, you're always a little bit worried about what your potential options are, and notably, none of these lists make it even possible to go as much as 4 models wide. So you are forced to run 3 models wide at every single threat level. Could not have planned this better. That's just kind of how it worked out, but that is exactly what we're going for with this list. So super happy to see that not only is it possible to do, but it's actually forced with this list. You cannot deviate from the planned course even if you wanted to, which is just awesome. I'm here for that. But yeah, that is going to do it for this roster building video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please do drop a like down below. Let me know what you guys think on the list. This is probably one of the most casual ones that we built, but also probably really obnoxious to play against. So definitely curious to try this out myself at some point and see how this plays, because it seems like it could be a lot of fun. And I mean, big models go. That can just be fun sometimes. So yeah, definitely let me know what you guys think down below. What would you guys do differently? Did I kind of miss like oh man, why didn't I include this model? It's a stupidly big model. Definitely let me know if I'm missing anyone obvious here, but yeah, very curious to hear what you guys' thoughts are. But that is going to do it for my part for this video. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please do drop a like down below. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. We do discussion-focused content like this during the weekdays, and we got battle reports on the weekends. So if you're a fan of any of that sort of stuff, feel free to jump on in. But that's going to do it for this one. So until next time, have a great day, everybody. Peace.